It's that time of year again, isn't it? December rolls around and suddenly everyone's talking about fresh starts. New year, new me, clean slate. Finally gonna get it together this time. The gyms are already preparing for the January rush. Self-help books are flying off the shelves. Everyone's making lists, setting goals, promising themselves that next year will be different. But here's what nobody talks about. Have you ever noticed how the people who make the biggest promises are often the same people who look absolutely exhausted by February? They start the year on fire, full of determination. But by Valentine's Day, something shifted. The spark is gone. And in its place is this quiet shame, this feeling of failing yet again. We treat New Year's resolutions like they're acts of self-love, like promising to become a better version of ourselves is the kindest thing we can do. But what if most New Year's promises aren't acts of kindness at all? What if they're actually subtle forms of self-punishment dressed up in motivational quotes? Stay with me here because this goes deeper than you think. Hit that subscribe button because we're about to unpack something most people won't tell you about self-improvement. A person looks back at their year, sees all the things they didn't accomplish, all the ways they fell short, and instead of having compassion for themselves, they make a list. Lose weight, wake up earlier, be more productive, stop procrastinating, read more, spend less, be better. On the surface, these sound like reasonable goals, but dig a little deeper and you'll see what's really happening. Each promise is built on, "I'm not good enough as I am." Each resolution whispers, "You're broken and you need to fix yourself." When you promise to transform yourself by January 1st, you're not being kind to yourself, you're being kind to an imaginary version that doesn't exist yet. You're sacrificing your present self, your real self with all its flaws and humanness, for some idealized future person who will finally be worthy of love. Sound familiar? It's the same pattern we see in people who are endlessly kind to others but cruel to themselves. A child learns early that love is conditional, that they're only valuable when they achieve, when they perform. So they grow up believing acceptance must be earned, and New Year's resolutions become the adult version of that childhood wound. If I just change enough, then maybe I'll finally be worthy. The pressure builds as December winds down. Everyone's talking about their goals. Social media floods with transformation posts. And if you're not planning some massive life overhaul, it feels like you're being lazy. But here's what nobody tells you. Most New Year's resolutions fail, not because people are weak, but because the promises themselves are fundamentally flawed. They're not rooted in self-compassion. They're rooted in self-rejection. Think about common resolutions. Lose weight. The underlying message? Your body isn't acceptable. Wake up at 5 a.m. Translation? You're wasting your life. Be more productive. Subtext? You're never doing enough. These aren't goals. They're punishments disguised as self-improvement. And just like chronic kindness to others, chronic promises to yourself create the same cycle. Exhaustion, resentment, the sense that no matter what you do, it's never enough. Studies show less than 10% of people keep their New Year's resolutions. But here's the darker part. The failure doesn't just feel like missing a goal. It feels like proof that they're fundamentally flawed, that they'll never change. This is pathological altruism turned inward. You're so kind to your future self that you punish your present self. You deprive yourself of rest because future you needs to be productive. You force yourself into routines that don't fit your actual life. But future you never arrives. There's only now. And if you're treating your now self like an obstacle rather than a human worthy of compassion, then your kindness isn't kindness. It's cruelty with a motivational soundtrack. Comment below and tell me, what's one New Year's resolution that left you feeling worse instead of better? Let's break that silence. January starts, and you're committed. But then life happens. You get sick, work gets stressful, you're exhausted, and suddenly keeping all those promises feels impossible. Instead of adjusting, instead of showing yourself grace, you push harder, No excuses, no days off. Winners never quit. So you keep pushing. You ignore your body's signals, you skip rest, you force yourself through exhaustion because stopping feels like failure. When you're endlessly committed to self-improvement promises, you ignore your humanity until you break. Neuroscience backs this up. Your brain doesn't distinguish between stress from overgiving to others and stress from over-demanding from yourself. Both lead to burnout. There's also this cultural myth of the fresh start. We're taught that January 1st is magic, but you don't reset. You're still you, with the same nervous system, the same triggers. Real growth is slow, messy, non-linear, but New Year's resolutions demand immediate transformation. So what's the alternative? You start with honesty, not about what you should want, but about what you actually need right now. Maybe you don't need to lose weight. Maybe you need to rest. Maybe you don't need to be more productive. Maybe you need to do less. Maybe you just need one small adjustment that makes your daily life manageable. Real change doesn't come from force. It comes from compassion. When you treat yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a close friend, when you acknowledge your limits, when you give yourself permission to be imperfect, that's when sustainable growth becomes possible. Would you look at someone you love and say, "You're not good enough, change everything by next month"? Of course not. But that's exactly what we do to ourselves every December. So instead of making promises, try making peace. Peace with where you are. Peace with what you've been through. Instead of a list of ways to fix yourself, make a list of ways to support yourself. What would make your life feel lighter? What would bring you joy? Maybe it's going to bed earlier because you're tired. Maybe it's moving your body in ways that feel good, not as punishment. Maybe it's saying no to one commitment so you have space to breathe. These aren't flashy goals, but they're real, and they come from caring for yourself, not rejecting yourself. The dark side of New Year's promises isn't that wanting to grow is bad. It's that we've confused growth with punishment. We've confused self-improvement with self-rejection. But growth doesn't require you to hate yourself into change. Real transformation happens when you love yourself enough to evolve gently, when you honor your limits, when you recognize that you're not broken, you're human. So as this year ends, ask yourself, are my promises rooted in love or fear, in acceptance or rejection? Because the promises that last don't come from January 1st motivation. They come from quiet, daily choices to treat yourself like someone worth caring for. Maybe your revolution is simply refusing to participate in self-punishment disguised as self-improvement. Maybe your rebellion is resting. Maybe your growth is staying exactly as you are and deciding that's enough. So maybe the bravest thing you can do this new year is nothing. Just be. Just exist without a performance plan. Just show up as yourself, messy and imperfect and beautifully human. That's the kind of promise worth keeping. Not to become someone else, but to finally accept who you already are. What topic should we explore next? Drop your ideas in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. We're just getting started.